The Singapore Sports Hub will be owned and managed by the government from the 9th of December, ending a public-private contract that was supposed to last till the year 2035. Now, plans are to make the 1.3 billion Sing dollar hub more relevant to the community and integrate it with neighbouring redevelopment plans. For more on this, we have with us in the studio our reporter Geraldine Yap. Geraldine, it's good to see you. Why is the government taking ownership of the Sports Hub now?
Now, the plan was always to take back the Sports Hub when the partnership with Sports Hub Private Limited, or SHPL, ends in 2035. And the contract that they had signed in 2010 had allowed for an early termination of the contract at no penalty, which is what has happened in this case. Now, Sport Singapore says that Singapore's sporting aspirations have grown over the years and the operating environment has changed. So, to give an example of that, I think more Singaporeans have been participating in sporting activities, and the appetite for live sports has also grown over the years. And so Sport Singapore says that ownership and direct management of the Sports Hub will allow them more control as well as flexibility over the use of Sports Hub, as well as the existing and also new developments in the wider Kallang Alive precinct. And it will also allow for a more streamlined process in terms of organising events. So, for example, an event organiser that wants to use multiple facilities will only have to deal with one party instead of going to different parties for approval and also for other administrative matters.
To streamline the process, as it were. Geraldine, you attended the media conference on this takeover of the Sports Hub today. Was cost, the cost of running the Sports Hub all these years, was that brought up? Was it a huge concern?
I think the cost was a concern, and many questions were asked about the cost that would be incurred to take over the ownership and management of the Sports Hub. And the management reassured us that they have done their sums. And in fact, the chairman of Sports Singapore even mentioned that he is a trained accountant. So he knows what he's doing, right? So what the government is doing right now is they are paying a lump sum, which will cover the outstanding loans that were taken out back in 2010 to build the facility, as well as the open market value of the Sports Hub. And Sports Singapore says that this is comparable to what it would have cost the government to continue running Sports Hub under the current arrangement. And that amount would work out to be about $2.4 billion. Some of this is government spending that has already been budgeted, and some of it will come from future revenue that they expect to generate at the Sports Hub. But they did also say that it's not just about cost and profitability, it's also about generating and adding value to the Sports Hub.
In arriving at this decision, we've had to do the financial due diligence to make sure that when we take over, what we would have to expend to achieve the potential that we envision will be much different from what we would have otherwise spent. But when we do take over this facility, there are additional commercial opportunities that will enable us to, if you like, to try and do an apples and apples, to use the same amount of money to achieve so much more.
Geraldine, the Sports Hub is an iconic building in Singapore, and back when it was first built and presented to the public, it was so different. It had this retractable roof and so on, but it's also been plagued with lots of problems as well. I mean, who can forget the issue with the grass and whether it would grow or not? That was even before it officially opened. Was that something that was factored in when it came to making this decision?
Well, in fact, we did ask these questions during the press conference. So to recap some of the issues, you mentioned the pitch problems in 2014, even before the Sports Hub was officially opened. There were a few football tournaments or football matches that were played at the Sports Hub, and there was a lot of complaints about the pitch. So, the Brazil and Japan national teams had come to play. The Italian side, Juventus, had come to play, and the way they described the pitch, they said it was more sand than grass. They said it was horrible. So that was just one of the issues. And you mentioned the retractable roof, right? So it's not just a national stadium, but also the indoor stadium was hit with leaking. One of the notable incidents was, of course, the Jay-Chou concert in 2014, when some concert goers had to watch the concert with umbrellas, they had to wear ponchos. And also, if you remember, some concerts were hit with audio issues. And in 2016, the National Day Parade was held there. But some of the crowd favourites, like the Red Lions and the Mobile Column, were not part of the parade because of the way that the stadium was designed. And on the actual day, on National Day, there was supposed to be a projection of the Singapore flag on the roof, and that failed because of what they said was a software issue. So, these are just some of the structural issues. And of course, there were also leadership issues, that the Sports Hub was facing. In the last 10 to 12 years, they've had 4 or 5 different CEOs. And I think this was a cause for concern for some people. But Sport Singapore said that it was not correct to say that the decision to take back the ownership and management of Sports Hub was due to what they called historical issues. And the CEO of Sports Hub, Lionel Yeo, he also defended what they called the legacy of the Sports Hub in terms of hosting notable sports tournaments and events, like, for example, the HSBC Rugby Sevens and the Football International Champions Cup, as well as entertainment acts, like, for example, BTS, Coldplay, Jay-Chou, JJ Lin. So here's what he had to say.
My starting point is always that the Singapore Sports Hub is a national asset, and we are privileged to have been given the opportunity to be stewards of this national asset since 2014. We have a proud track record. Over the years since 2014, we have hosted some 1,100 events that welcome about 9 million attendees. In terms of the visits that we've recorded to the whole precinct, the count now is about 86 million visits to the precinct.
Geraldine, anyone who's been to the Sports Hub will know just how vast that space is. It's really tough, and you've got to get a pipeline of events going in order to justify a lot of the bottom line for that venue. What do we know, though, about the big task that the new management team is going to take on? What do we know about them?
Right, so Sport Singapore mentioned that the existing staff of SHPL will be, and I quote, without exception, invited to stay on. And so this is, of course, if they want to stay on with the new management team. But the focus at the press conference was also on whether the current CEO of SHPL, Lionel Yeo, would be staying on. We did ask him that question, and he was quite coy on his future, but he did say that his focus was to ensure that the operations at the Sports Hub would not be affected by this handover.
Yeah, well, we really wish them the very best.
I think today really is not about me. Today is about the project. And I think my focus for the next 6 months is to work with my colleagues and my partners to ensure that there is as smooth a handover as possible to Sport Singapore, so that Singapore and Singaporeans do not enjoy any significant break in terms of service, in terms of value that they get from the Singapore Sports Hub.
Well, we wish them the very best of luck with this big task that they're taking on. Geraldine, thank you very much for coming to the studios and talking to us about this takeover of the Sports Hub. Geraldine Yap there.